Greetings, fellow humans. Welcome to another episode of Doing the Thing with your host, Scott Boersma. And today we are featuring one of the greatest humans out there. Admittedly, it's a biased opinion, and maybe only an opinion shared by me, but definitely at least one other person, probably a lot more, is the great Sarah Paul. We worked together this past summer at Deer Hill. She was doing the intern thing, and then I was like, why are you an intern? You have so many skills. And then I was like, no, I need the college credit. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But she was awesome in helping me out, taking care of the small X's and the Y's on the dotting of the T's when I was like kind of losing my mind with this group of students. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
So, Sarah, what did you get into the outdoor industry?
I always grew up in the outside. I grew up right outside of DC, so I spent a lot of time in Great Falls National Park and then up in the Appalachian Mountains in Western Maryland and West Virginia. And I just spent a lot of time doing climbing thing at camp, going to climbing gyms and being like, oh, I kind of just want to be outside forever. Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do, is just get outside forever.
Be outside forever. Did you have what was the moment that you were that you found outdoor ed? Like, I assume that you didn't grow up knowing that this was like a job that you could actually have.
So I grew up going a lot to this nature center at my house, and it's called Corden Creek. And they always had this programming, but it never processed to me that oh, those people who were there, that's their job, that's what they were doing. That never really clicked until probably high school when I started working at camps and I started working outdoor departments of camps. I was like, oh, these people are here for the summer, this is their job, but they do other stuff during the year. But this is fun. And I got to college and I knew what I wanted to do. I found recreation management. That's just kind of teaching, specifically environmental ed. And I was like, teaching's kind of cool, but I don't want to be inside. I get to go hike in the woods and play with all these children and teenagers and teach them through experiencing life and ways that they get to interact with the world, shaping them. And I was pretty stoked on that.
What was your favorite place that you visited as a kid that you continue to go back to even today?
This place in Maryland called Deep Creek Lake. It's a big lake and ski stuff. At Wisp in Maryland is the resort. And then there's year-round activities. And I remember as a kid, I would get a lake and they always had these rocks. And this very specific memory of me picking out a little family of rocks and begging my mom to let me take them home. I'm like, Mom, please let me take home this little rock family. I was a kid who brought home a lot of rocks and she wouldn't let me take them home. And so I have this very distinct memory of this little rock family I'd go back and visit Deep Creek.
And at this point, how many rocks had you brought home prior?
At least 25, without a doubt. So many rocks in my house.
Do you still have these rocks at your house?
I think there's definitely quite a few still there.
And so you visit this rock family once a year, right? You
definitely. I don't know that they're the same rocks, but in my 8-year-old head, they definitely were.
That's amazing. What has been your experience with college and starting out in the industry as far as what have you been doing as far as work stuff goes, or maybe even personal stuff?
Yeah. So when I first got to college, I was working in the outdoor program at the camp I grew up going to. I ended up not being a big fan of that. Not great support, mental health, having all the sources that we as counselors needed. That really sucked. Next summer, I went and worked at the ropes course, and I loved that. And we got into the more concentrated part of experiential ed major. And here at App State, where I just graduated from, we have a lot of interactive, classes. And if our big classes was over spring break, we did this huge sea kayaking trip out in Cumberland Island off the coast of Georgia. And I was like, this is what I could be doing for the rest of my life. What Mandy's doing, my professor Mandy, she's teaching and having fun with us and us as equals. And we're just hanging out here, but it's still, we're all learning and we're gaining new experiences and seeing the world.
What do you think has been the biggest impact that you've seen on yourself being in the industry?
I think that the way that people interact with me changed the way that I interact with others, and seeing the generosity and the care that other people have extended. In particular, who I was just talking about, one of my professors, Mandy, when she heard I was going out west for my internship, was like, oh, if you ever need anything, this person I used to work with 12 years ago has a place in Moab. And if you need anything, text me and I will get you a place to stay. And I never did that. I don't know would have been able to do that. But knowing that I had that option, if for some reason everything went wrong, oh, wow. I kind of put that a lot out into the way I interact with others is even if it's somebody I don't know very well and like haven't gotten the chance to get to know, I want to extend that kindness and like that opportunity to have everything that you need, the resources, the opportunities, and the kindness.
If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? An alternate reality where like outdoor ed doesn't exist in the way it does. What would you think you'd be doing instead?
I was almost a psychology major. I decided that was a little bit too much work for me, or like too much like sitting down and reading. I think I would be really into that, or education. One of those two things. Maybe social work. I think I'd have a lot of fun with social work. I think I'd be a lot about myself in that, and a lot about the other people through that too.
That's cool. I am curious to know, like, from all of your experiences, like what has been something that you've seen in somebody else, like the impact of the industry on whether it's your classmates or students that you've worked with. What have you seen the outdoors do for someone else?
I have this really good friend that I grew up who went to and did environmental ed. They were a few years older than me. I actually didn't even realize that they did this. We kind of lost touch like when they went to college, but figured it all out when I started doing this. And they worked in the industry for a little bit, and I think kind of towards like the end of when I used to know them growing up, they kind of became like mean and like they weren't really the nicest person to be around. And this might have just been their own personal development and the way that they grew as an individual. But when I like re-met them again after they'd been in the industry for a while, they had this strong warmth to them, this insane amount of character development and depth I hadn't really seen or didn't really remember seeing when we were kids. That felt really good to see, and it really showed to me the impact that being outside and interacting with people on a more personal and interconnected level, as I feel that we do in our world, can really shape somebody.
What's been your favorite trip that you've done, personal or professional?
I think it would be the sea kayaking trip that I did out to Cumberland Island. It was with like 13 of my favorite people. We didn't know if the weather was going to be good enough for us to sea kayak out, if we might have to take the ferry instead. And it was, I think, the first trip that Mandy had led in like 6 years that the weather was fine and it wasn't too windy. And so we were able to sea kayak out. We got super lost. We ended up in Florida a little bit. It's supposed to be like a 2-hour paddle. And I think it took us like 4. It was so much fun. We were there for 5 days and really into everything. Like there were wild horses and boars and alligators. I remember the first day, my friend Max, he's like, guys, my one goal for this trip is to see an alligator. We get to the island and like maybe 15 minutes later, he goes, holy shit, guys, come here. There's an alligator. And everybody like ran across the island to come see this alligator, which was like maybe 3 feet. Like it was a tiny alligator, but we had just had this like really long and kind of miserable paddle where we were just lost and tired and like sunburnt. We all ran and sprinted to go see this little alligator, and it was so good. Like childlike joy. But yeah, that's probably my favorite trip I've taken as of late.
So you break the 6-year streak of not being able to kayak on this trip and spend twice as much time to get out there as it should, to be super tired, to get really excited over what I imagine to be like 1-foot alligator at most.
It was pretty small, maybe 3. It wasn't a full-size alligator, but it was an alligator nonetheless.
That is so freaking cool. You sea kayak out there, and then what were you doing for the rest of the trip?
We sea kayaked out to the southern end and hiked in 2 miles for our first campsite. And then we went to the beach, we hung out, and then we sea kayaked up to the northern and camped there for a night, and then to another part and hung out and camped. Like we like sea kayaked around the island. And we actually lost a paddle on that. I think the first night we lost a paddle. One of our kayaks was a tandem kayak, so we ended up just sticking the lightest person and whoever we determined to be the strongest person in the 2-person kayak so that they could go around and be fine. And then we get to the northern terminus, and the next day we wake up and somebody's PFD is missing. So we spend like 3 hours searching the campsite for this PFD, and we find it, I think like 12 feet up a tree, because they accidentally left trail mix in the pocket of their PFD, and a raccoon found it and ran it up a tree. It was like a very chaotic trip, but it was so much fun.
Was the PFD okay, or did it?
It was fine. It was perfectly fine. Yeah. Except no more trail mix.
It's probably a miracle that y'all found it, because like nobody's looking up for a freaking PFD that.
Yeah. I don't know why we were like, we were desperate.
And that doesn't belong up there. Oh my gosh. That is too good. to come out even more, what has been your experience of the industry as far as how do you see the industry right now as far as outdoor ed and even outdoor recreation and such?
I see it a lot as like one big community. Like the people who I've met within are the people that I want to surround myself with, and the people I've come to realize that I have been surrounding myself with, whether intentionally or not. And I'm really excited to kind of become more a part of learn new skills and see the way that the community welcomes me and others, because the way that I've seen it so far has been really exciting. And I kind of see it as like one big friend group. I feel like it's really interconnected. I don't know, I have this thing, a lot of my friends and I have this thing where our friends know about us, or like our friends' friends know about us, but we don't know who they are. You're friends with this person, and I've never seen you before in my life, but if they like you, I bet I'll like you too. And so they don't like this person. Cool. I don't like this person. Like, I don't like this part of whatever's going on. And so I'm going to like stay away from that. But I know that this is fun and this is kind of similar.
At some point, it feels like you've know most people and you've like or heard of. Once I hit Outward Bound, because they all knew a handful of people from Deer Hill, and I was like, yep, I know them. Yep, I know them. Yep, I know them. And oh, you're that person that like so and so talks about all the time.
Yeah, or like I met somebody in Utah who had never been east, and they knew one of my best friends' best friends. And I was like, that's so weird. Like, I forget that people exist out of my little circle, but like this person is like a huge kayaker. And
you mentioned that you didn't like the one nature place that you worked at. Why'd you not like that job?
so it was the camp I grew up going to. I don't want to be in bunk with kids. Like I knew I was just graduating high school, and it's like I don't want to be in a bunk 24/7 with kids for 7 weeks. I think that's fair. I want to like spend my time indoors department and hiking, climbing, all of that stuff instead of focusing on the kids that I am assigned to. And that was in my contract, and I had signed the contract knowing I was going to be out of bunk. And 2 weeks before, they were like, actually, it was like right after COVID. And so usually they have a lot of international counselors come, and they're like, actually, so you're going to be in bunk. And then I was like freaking out, and I was like, oh god, if I had more time to process it, I would have been fine, could have gotten okay with that, but I hadn't. I just missed my whole CIT summer where like you're supposed to like learn to be with kids. I'm comfortable obviously being in bunk, but it wasn't what I signed up for. Because I love the place and like I grew up going there, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try it and like see how it goes. Did the first session, which is 4 weeks, and I was the week before the first session started. I went to my unit, had like was in charge of all of the bunks with the kids in my age group, which I had 13-year-old girls, and I had the like director's kids in my bunk, and I was like, I don't even remember her name. I was like, I can't do this. I'm feeling really stressed. I'm not comfortable having these kids that I wasn't prepared to have. Like, I don't really know what's going on. She's like, oh no, you'll be fine. Like, everybody's anxious, and like talk to me about it at all for like it was the week before. So the whole week leading up to it, I'm like crying every day, like just like was giving me any support. When we get through it, and like they're fine, like 13-year-old girls, and it was a very drama-full bunk. And so I was just having to deal with that, and it was really taking a toll on me. And every time I reached out for help, they were like, everybody feels like this. It's okay. Like, get through it. And like actual substance or conversation. This is the place I grew up going to. This is my favorite place in the world. And then working there, wow, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be. This sucks. And I talked with my department head, who's still one of my favorite people. She's from the UK, and so she couldn't come for the first 2 weeks, and she came for the last 2 weeks of the session and the rest of the summer. I told her what was going on, and she was like, we're going to get you out of bunk. And so they like really tried, and she like put all her weight, and they were like, if we take Sarah out of bunk, we have to take everybody else who was supposed to be out of bunk as well. And so I felt I was drowning. Nobody could help me. I've always had trouble reaching out for help, and I did, and I just got shut down, which really sucked. I've learned that's really common in like camp industries in particular.
Do you now have like this distinction between camp counselor versus like instructor? Like, is that like a huge difference for you? It does.
Like, I'm not a counselor. I'm an instructor. Like, I'm obviously here for you, and like I feel like it's hard to put into words the difference between it in my head. But to me, it's like I'm instructing and guiding on course and experience. Whereas like a camp counselor, it's like a different thing every day for me. Like, it's not an expedition or trip. Today we're going to go to the arts and crafts department, and then tomorrow we're going to go to the dance department, which is fine. And like, that's great. Like, I love both of those things, but like there is a distinction to me, if that makes sense.
The main difference is like, is your primary focus be like there because you're just like making sure that they're having fun is like your number one goal, versus as instructors we're like actively pushing for some sort of like growth, whether it's personal, interpersonal, mental, emotional, social. I can distinctly remember like I like had a student on my boat and she was rowing and I was worried about us hitting anything. Like she's good. And then going down a rapid was successful too. Do you have any trips that you're looking forward to, personally or otherwise?
I don't really have any big trips planned right now. I was supposed to be on a sea kayaking trip in the Everglades around now, but right now I'm focused on moving out of my apartment and moving into my truck. Um, because I
Yes.
own a lot of things, so that's going to be hard.
Where's been your favorite place that you've visited?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know. I really, really, really enjoy like the Telluride area in the summer. That's just really enjoyable. Not to be basic.
No.
I don't know, 4 years ago, I went to Zion for the first time with my entire family. Nobody else really likes to hike in my family, but I really wanted to do the Narrows, and so I did the Narrows by myself. That was my first bigger solo thing where I like did the Narrows by myself. It holds a very special place in my heart. Zion does. I really enjoy that little pocket of Utah.
Oh yeah, Utah is like my favorite place to visit, and I don't want to be very far away from Utah, but I never want to live in Utah. And to be clear, my reaction when you said Telluride was, I'm probably going to screw up some of these details. So you're at Deer Hill doing the internship. You finally had like a couple days off. You bust your butt to make it up to Telluride, which is 2.5 hours away, to Bluegrass Festival.
Yeah, I had no days off, but I knew I wanted to go to Telluride Bluegrass, especially for day one to go see Billy Strings for like the fourth time. And I got up there, I had a finger up, and I was looking for a ticket. And some guy was like, "I'll give you a 4-day pass for $80. Deal, done." I was only going to be there for Billy Strings day one and like the rest of the set, and then drive back to Deer Hill that night because I had to work at 8 in the morning, 2 hours away. But I had the 4-day pass, so I therefore then decided that I was going to drive from Deer Hill to Telluride, 2.5 hours away, right after work, every night, and come back in time to work at 8 in the morning the next day for 4 days. And then I finally had Monday and Tuesday off the next 2 days. Sunday night, slept in Telluride in my truck, and woke up and drove home. It was great. I saw pretty much every act I wanted to see. I had a great time.
Yes, things that you have done that people were like, "What are you doing?" And everybody was impressed. Like that was super cool. But like when you get older, that's like part of your like lore. Sarah Paul, Deer Hill lore. I was an intern. Like especially if you make it like a 3rd season or a 4th season, it's part of your lore is like, yeah, she like got a she went 4 days up to Telluride to go to the Bluegrass concert, and she like got to see everybody that she wanted to see. Slept up there, came back down, and worked all of those days as well. Like insanity for sure, and highly respectable. I also just want to share this other story just because I think this is hilarious. So I did Canyon Country 2 or 3 years prior, and it was like so freaking hot. Oh, we're gonna go to the same place. It's gonna be so stinking hot. I like won't need a sleeping bag, because that was like one of the things I was like, this was stupid. I brought this 20-degree sleeping bag and I ended up sleeping on top of it the entire time. And of course we get there and it like cools off. And I brought a really light sleeping pad, a sleeping bag liner, and then a bivy sack. And I was definitely cold, and it would have been fine, but it would have been miserable. And you were so gracious and bailed me out on that one. And the best part about this is that then later, when I like meet somebody else, and I like introduce myself, the first thing that he says is like, "Were you that instructor who left who forgot their bag?" And I was like, no. Like, yes, that was me, but no, I intentionally left my bag and screwed up. I didn't accidentally forget it. I have a whole new level of ownership on this. I was like, yes, it was intentional that I left my bag. I didn't accidentally forget it. Thank you.
I think the best part was like I was off the next two days or so after that, and I come back, and an instructor I hadn't met before was like, "Oh, you gave Scott your sleeping bag," and I'm like, "Who are you?"
Oh my gosh, that was so stupidly epic moments that of my outdoor guiding career of just like, yep, I was like thinking I was like really smart and going light, and then I was like, oh, the one time I did that, I got bit in the ass so hard. On that note, I want to thank you for coming onto my little podcast that who knows where this is going to go in the next 5 years, but I am doing 100 episodes, so get behind it.
Yeah, I look forward to all 100 of them.
And
I'm
they
excited to
probably
see
will.
it.
And if I don't care how mediocre they are, it will all be great and wonderful.
Exactly.
And with that, I just wish you good luck in what you're doing, and hopefully you get to quote unquote do the thing.